Thank you for coming all. We are going to begin our Affirmative Action Advisory Commission meeting dated April 4th, Thursday, in the City Council chambers. The first on the agenda is approval of minutes from January 2019.
And I do have a copy here. Did it, everyone, it was in the email that I sent
Right.
out. Did everyone
Yeah, I
receive
read
it?
it.
Yes, right, yes. Yeah, thank you, Scott. Thank you for that. Do I have
I move that we approve the previous minutes.
thank you, Bob.
I second.
Thank you so much, Vera, for seconding. On our new business, the first item on the agenda is review of completed firefighter recruitment.
We have to vote.
Oh, sorry.
Move second, then all
Thank-
those in
Okay.
favor.
Thank you. Thank you.
All in
Thank you.
Sorry,
favor?
I sit
All
on
in
so many
favor?
boards. It's
All
Aye.
in favor? Thank you so much.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much, and I thank you again.
Minutes was approved.
The next item on our agenda is new business, and Scott, you're going to help us with
Yeah.
the review of the completed firefighter recruitment that we had.
So, within HR, everyone within HR has certain departments that they're kind of in charge of. And Courtney Jones is assigned to the fire department. I'm assigned to the police department. So when we come to the police department discussions, I'm gonna have a lot more knowledge about what's going on across the street versus what's going on at our fire departments. But I do share, we did have a recruitment process that started last year for the firefighter positions. And that matrix is in front of you. That process has now concluded. We do have a list of, I think, 29 individuals who could be hired within the next 2 years by Chief Carlston based on openings. I know that they have at least one opening with the vacancy of the retirement of Chief Bickford, and there's been a few other retirements over there, so I assume that there's gonna be a handful of new firefighters. As you can see, we initially had 205 applications received. You do the minimum qualification review, that goes down to 197 that were eligible to begin the testing process, and they have a very similar process to the police department. Numerous steps, physical ability, and then a written, and then background, interviews, all that. As with a lot of our processes, minority representation at the initial stages was good. It matched the demographics of our broader community. But you go down to the current list that we have, I think there's only one minority, someone who identifies as American Indian or Alaskan Native. So we did lose, and it was the, not only the CPAT process, which is the physical ability testing, but also the written exam was a lot of the disqualifiers there. So, kind of disappointing when it comes to minority representation, especially at the fire department. But
How many are currently employed by the fire department?
the fire department has it's in the 130s.
How many are minorities?
That I'd have to reference my other, which I don't have in front of me. It's probably right around 7%, 7-8%. Yeah, it's low.
Very.
So baseline, it's
Okay.
low, unacceptable. And we have a big gap too. As same with our police department. You know, that's low as well. We have a gap to shrink there.
So if the written portion of it is disqualifying most of the people, I know we've talked about this last year, and I don't really remember a whole lot of follow-up on it. Have they changed or considering changing whatever's on the written exam that's disqualifying? You know, not necessarily to make things easier.
Yeah,
But
and I'll have to check on what their written exam is, because I know the police officer exam is state mandated. I'm not sure exactly what the written exam for firefighters is, if that's
Okay.
maybe state mandated, but I'll have more
Okay.
information. I'll get more information on that. And how much authority the city has in molding an exam to meet our needs. Yeah. But I would definitely get that information.
do they have practice ones? Just out of curiosity.
Another good question. I know they do for police officer, yes.
Okay.
We have study guides.
Okay.
But I'll have to get back to you on that.
Any questions?
No, it does, the original numbers seem to be reflective. So I think maybe we're gaining a little and drawing interest, but like you've said, whether we have to have practice sessions or mentoring or something to get them over that next hurdle.
Yeah, some people just don't take tests well.
Yeah.
And some people, based on their socioeconomics or their educational, where they've grown up, sometimes they haven't had the opportunities to be afforded some of the opportunities that would benefit them in a structured process such as this.
And that, I think
Yeah.
we were running into that when we were talking in previous times and years, even with the minority participation in contracts. A lot of the minority businesses didn't have the experience submitting bids and applications through the technical process involved now as what it used to be. And I think it could be some of the same stuff here, I think.
Yeah.
I would think they would want to review it, because when you left, then, like, at least for the blacks and, others,
Yes,
they
ma'am.
did good until you got to the CPAT.
Yeah.
And then it
Drops
got even
off.
worse when it
Yeah.
got, to the, and they did good in the live practice.
Mhm.
But I wonder what changed from the live practice to
Yeah.
the actual
Yeah.
one.
Were any of you able to attend the live practice or the testing? I know, I think Erie Johnson was able to.
Yeah.
And I think he had a cadre of
Little
not only
ones.
his own family, but some of his that he's like mentoring. So that's important. On the back side of that sheet is the gender flow. You can see that we only had 12 females. And as they went through the process,
Written exam. That's where we have
Passed.
one.
11 out of the
Yeah.
12 failed the CPAT,
Yeah.
which is the
Wow.
physical, the 7 or 8 station. So again, even when it comes to gender diversity, we're,
Do we know, going back to so the interview, I see one Latino made it through all of them up until the interview. Do you know why one would not pass the interview?
Interview
Especially
is-
if they made the written test, the physical
Yeah.
exam, and we know we need more people of color.
absolutely, yeah.
Maybe that's really one area where affirmative action can somewhat kick in.
Sure.
Like, what would make them not pass the interview?
I know the
Looking for.
interview is.
That she
is-
didn't have.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So-
The interview process, it's scored, so based on, there's a panel, which included the fire chief, included Lieutenant Solis, Lieutenant Alvarez, a police officer, Chief McDougal, and then representative from HR. It was proctored, and it was, the questions were all scored based on, so everyone had the same questions, of course, but then the individual reviewers were scoring that, and then you add up the scores, and that's how it breaks down. So for whatever reason, maybe someone didn't present themselves or didn't answer something clearly, that could be, you would get a lesser score if you don't answer clearly, or you stumble through a question. But again, even some people just don't interview well. So is there an opportunity for us to do some sessions or, teachable moments on how to present yourselves? Yeah.
I guess I just don't know I would think there'd be more correlation with the CPAT as far as ability on the job versus interview for a firefighter.
Absolutely.
Because they're not
Could be.
interviewing for a corporate CEO position where there's, you know what I mean? I
Yeah,
just-
absolutely, yeah.
When we have difficulty getting people of color and the numbers always end up looking fairly white,
Non-existent.
and then I see
Yeah.
that, well, we
Yeah.
did have one
Yeah.
make it through,
Yep.
why, I always question why there's not an additional push there, or that's not some consideration to be made. I'm not certainly not one that advocates for, well, if they can't pass the test, or,
Yeah.
I'm saying, but when we're talking about, because in an interview, you're talking about more subjective scoring. It's
Mhm.
the interviewer, as
Exactly.
opposed to a test that's objective. Everyone's,
Yeah.
you get a score, same with
Yeah.
the physical examination. So I don't know if where we do have more subjective criteria, is it really where we should start looking at what can we do so that, when we do have someone of color a minority and or a female, make it all the way to there, that we
And
keep that,
then
you know, that
drop
they keep
off.
that in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's even discouragement
Or-
sets in.
Yeah.
That's exactly in itself what will make
Well, and-
someone be like, I don't wanna do this, I've made it this far, I'm not gonna get a fair shot, I'm never gonna do this again. And then they're gonna tell
word gets
the
out.
other people who,
Yeah.
you know, might be interested and more than capable, and then they're going to feel the same way. Because when you get down to the eligible referred,
Yeah.
all 28 of the whites were referred, and literally not, I mean, just
Yeah.
that one Native American, that's it. To
Yeah.
even if the Latino had the interview, she still could have been referred.
And actually, as I look at this, that person may not even have showed up if they didn't pass or fail. It shows that they were eligible to be there, but, so that may have been a no-show
On the interview?
on the interview.
On the interview.
Do we ever follow up with those? Like, is there a procedure in place to,
There is with police officer.
Yeah, I know.
Because that's
you're
that's
behind that, I
mine.
know.
Yeah. I'm a little bit more, but with this, yeah, probably not, I would assume, but there should be. Yeah, why didn't you, I'd wanna know.
Could there be a recommendation that, whoever you said that was in charge of this,
Mhm.
that, you know, hey, the Affirmative Action Commission would like some
Absolutely.
follow-up?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the whole confidentiality, I'm not saying give us the name, we're saying
know
can they
why
specifically
that-
themselves reach out and say, hey, you made it through everything, why? Is it that they just got a different job offer in the time being? Is it, were they discouraged, I mean,
It might be interesting to even invite them to the next meeting and just say, how do you feel it went? What was right, what was wrong, what do you, someone from the fire department. I mean, we kinda did that with the police department, and some changes were made, and maybe we need to do the same thing with
Yeah.
the fire department.
Okay, why, that can be part of next month's, conversation.
Conversation, yeah.
Because at this point,
Yeah.
none of them have been referred for hire.
No, they've not hired off the list yet.
Yeah.
So, but I would assume within the next probably 2 months, there will be some hires at the fire department. Bless you.
thank you.
So should we move to police officer, which I have a lot more knowledge and information about? I feel I can speak in a
Are the
lot more,
numbers better,
with a
Scott?
lot more confidence.
Yeah.
If so,
Do you wanna go there?
So the process is ongoing, so we're still, the application process is still open. At this point, we only have about 100 and, I checked right before I came in, so we have 111. Your sheet reflects 110, so one more person. We need a lot more, because our history is, you take that, so let's say we have 110, there's easily 10 duplicate applications in the system. Sometimes when people go in to update their information, I don't know what they do, but they click something where it adds another application. So the numbers are a little skewed right from the get-go. I have to go in and remove ones that are duplicates. But then we do our minimum qualification review, so then I'll lose some people there that don't have the education, or they answered affirmatively to felonies or drug usage, that are automatic disqualifiers. So when you look at 110, you easily take off 10 just for duplicate applications. You can easily take off another 10, 15 maybe for minimum qualifications. So now we're in the 80s. And typically, when it comes to people showing up to actually begin the testing process, which is the physical ability testing, we're usually under 40%. So now 80, now we're in the lower 30s, essentially for the pool. So that's discouraging, so it's always better, I think, to bolster those numbers. So my plea is, if you have social or professional networks, help get the word out. The applications are still open through Sunday, all Sunday. They close at 11:59 p.m. So anyone that wants to apply has through the weekend, but come
Is that the
Monday
6th?
morning. That's the 7th,
7th.
They even have the portable command station up here
on the hilltop.
on the
Exactly.
hilltop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I-
in our
They have
parking
the
lot,
app. Yeah.
Paul came and talked
Yeah.
to the NACP, and I asked him would he park it there and put an application sign up
It's
there
there.
saying we need,
Yeah.
you know, but
Yeah.
a lot of people, you know, when they start out and then, like to say about the written test, but he said that you can also, you know, they'll let you have the written test to study the written test.
Oh, yeah, there's a study guide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a study guide. You can even go on the company website, because the test is mandated by the state. So it's a certain company that writes the test, gives the test, but via that same company, people can go online to the company and take an online assessment, take an actual test, just to see how they do. So you kind of have and it's only like $15. And I know that we even have, in the past, if there's some financial difficulties for some applicant to do that 15, I will cover several tests for someone. I'm sure people around the table would cover tests for individuals
Yes,
that just
absolutely.
can't do it, but they want that kind of assurance to know that, yeah, I can do it.
And exactly what you were saying, because I remember we've done it in the past where we've sponsored those study guides to whoever was not. And I think let's identify that, because you know that there are people who need those. And as you said, we will be very obliged to help in some way or the other if we can.
Yeah.
So if we could identify, we'd love to help, and we would, help
And that's
them.
part of so we've hosted 4 police officer applicant workshops over the past month, various locations. Overall, we had 55 individuals show up, and there was a good diverse representation, not only gender, but racial and ethnic diversity within that. But that's part of our conversation when we say, once you have once your application's submitted, you can then come down and pick up a free study guide. We highly suggest you get the study guide, and then if you want to go to online and take the test, do that. And then there's community partners out there that will help you cover that cost if it's just a barrier for you. Now, I've not received any phone calls from anyone, but we do put that out there. So I'm hopeful. So as you look at the numbers, I think they're pretty typical. We usually see good representation, at least when it comes to the demographics of our community, at least at the initial stages, as they go through the process, which starts the 23rd. You have another sheet that lists the testing processes, the dates. Yeah,
Yep.
you've got that. Yep. So April 23rd is the first date,
Yeah.
followed by the 27th and the 2nd. So on Monday, because the applications close Sunday evening at 11:59 p.m. On Monday, I go through every single application and through a matrix form and make sure that they meet minimum qualifications as far as education. Do they have at least 30 college credits, or a year of military service, or a year of being another police officer someplace. I make sure that they don't have any of the automatic disqualifiers, and then all those individuals immediately get emailed to self-schedule their physical ability testing on those dates. So they need to select either the 23rd, the 27th, or May 2nd. We give 3 different times for them to do so. And there'll be numerous opportunities for me before the 23rd as I start seeing people self-schedule. Those that don't will receive follow-up emails and then follow-up phone calls saying, hey, if you are honestly interested in being a Davenport police officer, you need to make sure you schedule the test, because you can't proceed in the process until you do so. So I'll be doing calls on the front end of the testing process. And then when we get through the entire process, people that don't show up for whatever reason, then I'll be making personal phone calls to find out why.
Okay.
And I'll be happy to report that out at a future meeting once the process is done about, what were some of the reasons why they didn't show up for various reasons, or, so we'll see how that goes.
Just a quick question and see what we all think about it. As working in a library recently, we had this individual patron who come in, who's not a patron, but he's a public person who can come into a library, academic library. And they did not have access whatsoever. The application had to be filled online. They did not have access to
the
a
computer,
computer
yeah.
and things like that. So is it in some way, not now, but maybe later, is it in some way that we could take help from our public library where we could schedule, like, April 23rd, 10 to 1 p.m., this computer dedicated for, something like
Sure.
that, for applications
Yeah.
and things, because there might be individuals
Yeah.
who may not have the means to make, to,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
so something if we could
Mhm.
have an association with a public library, help us
That would be
out.
great, because we do have one computer in
With us?
HR
Okay.
that's dedicated for application
Oh, okay,
processes.
okay.
But, can they get down to City Hall? Maybe not. Maybe they're closer to Eastern Library or Fairmount.
Fairmount, or, and Maine now is
So-
open till 8 o'clock. So like,
Yeah.
you have that access of coming at any time, even if the door,
Yeah.
the door will close when the employees move here.
Yeah.
So it's just a thought for us to consider
Yep.
maybe for the future,
Absolutely.
to help
Yep.
them.
So the numbers for 2019, as far as the, as far as the, she has her headphones on, she can't hear.
That's awesome.
Naomi. Shh. As far as the minorities who have applied, do we have the numbers for, like, in comparison to the last round of applicants to see if they've increased, if they've decreased? If there's, I know there's been some stuff held to kind of promote it, so if that has helped with the numbers.
Yeah, I would say that they probably they may have upticked, because it seems like every single year, because Captain Emming keeps a track of every single recruitment process.
Okay.
Minority representation has increased every single year.
Okay.
What's been interesting is Caucasian representation has decreased over the years. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not been a significant increase in the minority representation, but it's trending in the right direction. I guess is what I want to say. I can get specific numbers over the years of how we've seen that increase. These numbers look fairly similar to like the very last process we just did in 18.
Okay.
Not a huge variance or difference that I'm seeing. The overall total, we used to have in 16, in 17, we'd have probably just over 300 applicants. And remember in 17, we did 2 back-to-back
Yep.
recruitments because the list got expired immediately and we had to have another. And so some of this may just be a little bit of exhaustion in the community.
Okay.
And then there's also, when you look at the national conversation about policing,
Exactly.
it's not as neat of a career in some eyes, and it's negatively portrayed, and that would maybe be families having conversations about, kid may say, well, I think I want to be a police officer, and parents may say,
No.
oh, heck no.
Yeah.
It's just
Sorry.
based on
And there's,
what
And
the
then
job is, yeah.
especially depending upon which neighborhood you come from or what area you
Yeah.
live in, like, to be a police officer is not an honorable thing,
Exactly.
because typically
Yeah.
police in that area, it's taken away their fathers or it's taken away their grandfathers or their uncles and things like that. So they don't look at it as a twofold situation. They just look at what the police has taken away from them versus if they were to become one, what they could actually contribute or the change that they might be able to implement. So I think a big part of the reason why minorities, especially blacks, and I would say Latinos as well, the reason why they're not coming out as often, it's really more so a fear of what other people are going to say about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like how other people are gonna, how they'll feel.
Locally.
Well,
basically.
I think right now there's other employment opportunity that
Oh, sure.
there wasn't a few years ago, so they've
Yeah.
got more choices. It'd be kind of interesting, St. Ambrose has a criminal justice department, and a lot of the people then go into police. I wonder if their numbers have increased or decreased, or what their ethnic breakdown would be.
Well, we bring up an interesting question because the librarian who liaisons with the criminal department, I had shared our police advertisement with her to continue, and it looks like it's just steady, at least at this moment in time. And we didn't discuss much in detail, but but there has been expressed interest among students from that department to be thinking about apply. I mean, I don't know if they have gone ahead and done it, but there has been an expressed interest of applying for the police jobs in some way or the other. But there seems to be, the student population, when you talk about the criminology subject study, seems to be at this moment in time the same as been.
I know of two individuals. One was a female, young, in her early 30s, and one was a black gentleman in his late 30s. And she said, well, I can get a better paying job, and she went to work at the nuclear plant in security. And the gentleman goes, I did go through the process, and he did get hired up in one of the Chicago suburbs, and he said the first week I got shot at, and he said I all of a sudden had a different sense of reality, and he goes, I went into counseling instead. He said,
Yeah.
so I don't. It's all kinds of reasons, but I think truly it takes a special person to be
I think
a
so, yeah.
police officer.
It takes somebody that really wants
Yep.
the job and
Yeah.
love the community that they working in, 'cause I wouldn't want it.
And that's-
Not here in Davenport.
Uh-uh.
I think a lot of people, maybe if they are growing up here and want to be a police officer, they chase that dream in another place.
Could be, yeah. So, a good pipeline for us, and I said this before, now that we have school resource officers in some of the middle schools, and of course in all the high schools, and we have a pretty good Police Explorer program at the police department, that's a good recruitment tool for us to funnel those young men and women
Yes, start when they
into that
young.
program.
Yeah.
And I know that right now Hank Jacobson runs that, but then there's gonna be a new officer assigned to Crime Prevention Bureau. So there'll be a new officer kind of overseeing the explorers, and sometimes when you have someone new, that's a new opportunity for increased, programming and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a good funnel for us to have our school resource officers kind of identify those young men and women and say, yeah, you're at least 14 years old, Police Explorers, try it.
And I want to jump at this at a later stage here when we talk about it and in one of our meeting agendas. But just wanted to mention when you said police resource officers, my daughter goes to Davenport Central, and we have our police resource officer there, and I had kind of casually mentioned that when the parents come for the open houses, when the students are registering and things like that at the start of the year, just as the teachers and all the other clubs are waiting around, if, I think it's Mr. Director Sharif, I think.
Sharif, yep.
Is at Davenport Central, if he has a little moment, and if he could be there at that time, and, talk about what the Davenport Police District does, and kind of, have some kind of an extra information, complete all this, there are jobs here as well. How do you motivate to behave well and see to it that you have something for you in the future working, because they're ideals to many of them in school, all these police resource officers. How could they influence, not
Yeah.
just behavior, but future
I would think so.
in this department?
It's kind of my intent. I think they're in a unique position.
Yes,
We see all the young men and women,
yes,
so.
yeah.
I think one thing to note from the numbers, and I understand it's still open for a few more days, so the
Yeah.
numbers will hopefully shift upward. But if we're looking at the numbers right now and looking at percentages, you have blacks applying at a higher ratio than in the Davenport population, based on the
Oh, yeah.
number of applications. Similar with Latinos. I mean, there's
Yeah.
not, if you're adding up the numbers, there's not that percentage of Latinos in Davenport.
Sure.
But you're getting,
Yep.
a higher percentage. So I think we've shifted from it's not that they're not applying. I think our biggest problem happens
Our process.
as you go down.
The
Yeah.
Process
All
finish.
all of a sudden that whittles down, and then
Oh,
the
yeah.
percentages shift, and
Mhm.
it's
No,
whites
yep.
that make it through, not those of color. So that's really where I think
Yeah.
more of the focus should be. I think that the numbers speak for themselves when we're looking at percentages, that getting people of color to apply, they're applying, and they're applying, by far more than whites
Yep.
when we're looking at their representation of the population here in the city of Davenport, or even in the Quad City region, because I get that everybody's not necessarily a Davenport resident that's
Sure.
applying,
Oh, of course.
but
Yeah.
just in general in the Quad City region, so something to keep in mind as this process goes forward and keeping track of those numbers.
I think it'll, I'm hopeful that it's gonna help somehow, that I'm going to, be much more aware of, who's showing up and who's not, and if you're not showing up, why? I mean, is there a barrier that we've created somehow that, or is it just lack of interest, or what? So I'm gonna definitely take a much more interest in that. So we'll see as this process whittles down. We may have anywhere from 2 to 4 openings or so. It's kind of hard to say. Last year we hired 16 officers, new officers. So it was a huge year. We won't see that this year, but there's some retirements that are pending over there, so there's good 2 to 4.
Yeah.
Oh, you need to take it to the restroom again. Go ahead. So we'll see. There's an opportunity.
In any way, when, as Jasmine brought up, how we see a drop, let's say interviews, is it something that it's working with the other partners in the community, which I know maybe Career Center Ambrose would be willing to take this as a help. Could there be these training sessions or trial sessions with the help of,
And we've done a lot of similar things in the past. We've done physical ability boot camps.
Yeah.
Where they could come even before the test, kind of like the CPAT live practice that the fire department does. We've done a couple of those. Attendance was less than stellar. We had just a handful of people, and there's been some written exam in years past. There's been some kind of testing, I guess, similar, just a process that was put on that. Again, attendance was very minimal. The actual interview with the interview panel, I think you said on a couple years ago, they no longer do that formalized interview just because it was at a higher disproportionate rate, cutting out minorities because they just weren't used to maybe interviewing in a formal setting.
Right.
So it was just to determine that, this is doing nothing to help us at all, and really in 30 minutes you can't really get to know someone. So they don't even have that component as part of the initial process. It's not till the end where the chief and the command staff just
They
want to meet
sit,
with you and
yeah.
says, you're already on the list, we want to hire you, what additional information do you want to share? And then they get hired, so. But I'm excited for, this process, especially being now I'm the hiring manager for it, so I have a little more control over how it works, and, it's
Yeah.
pretty much Captain Emmy and I that run this process. I will say, over the last year, we did increase diversity, gender diversity, like 2 or 3 last year. And then we hired our first Asian male in Anjan Nguyen. He speaks fluent Vietnamese, so that's good. And then we hired 2 additional Latinos, which Ola, Iowa gave us a lot of awesome press on. Tar, I love Tar Macias, the publisher of this, but, you got Martine Gonzalez and Skylar Mitchell there, along with Mike Reyes.
Yeah.
A lot of you know Mike. But they gave us great press on that. And actually, Martine Gonzalez, he's the one on right here. He assisted with one of our police officer workshops as the new officer perspective, and he did a phenomenal job at that. But they're halfway through their FTO program, so yay for them. And
And
some of
yeah,
what we're
some of this just takes time. I mean,
Yeah.
you now hopefully his leadership will inspire somebody else. It's like when you raise your kids and you tell
Sure.
tell them, well, we want you to do this, and
Yeah.
we don't think you should do that. No, I've got and it takes it just takes time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But
So-
that's good to.
Yeah, it was,
We,
was
we,
good.
we have at SAU, we have LULAC that is very active. SAU LULAC chapter is very active. SAU Black Students Union is very active. You know, just as Officer Gonzalez, did he say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Gonzalez.
Gonzalez, did you say? You know, people like him, what if we get him on our campuses, you know, where
Oh,
that
absolutely.
is also the population who applies
Yeah.
quite a few times, you know, to speak to these clubs that we have, because they have very active engagement within them. They may not, but they might tell somebody, because
Yeah.
after we have shared things about police or fire, there has been an interest which we see spike on the social media channels. But how do I convert that into an application of a diverse
Yeah.
individual, for example? So maybe, you know, something that I would think of for me to get in touch with my students
Yeah.
back in these respective clubs.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, the best recruiters are the actual police officers that are on the street each and every day.
Yeah.
And if we can capitalize on some of our minority newer officers, yeah, that would
I'd
be,
certainly
that would be incredible.
look forward to making
I
a
was just
contact.
showing the Ola America, they gave us a lot of love when it
Yeah.
came to Officer Gonzalez and Mitchell,
Awesome.
so. But, yeah, the hiring of African Americans, that's a struggle. Yeah,
Yes,
that's,
it is.
yeah, where we're succeeding in some respects in Latino and then with Anjan in Asian American, we are really struggling in African American, and I don't quite. Some of that's the neighborhood issue, and then, you know, I
And
can't.
some of it, when I first came in, we had quite a few African Americans and sergeants and all that, 'cause I know we had Mike Cole, we had Harrington, and he moved to California to be a private investigator, and
Sure.
then we had Outlaw, and we had
Is he still here?
no,
Amro student, outlaw.
yeah,
Oh,
Outlaw,
okay.
yeah,
Wasn't there Chris or something?
yeah. Chris,
Or wait, what was his name? There was another one.
he's
Short.
Dixon. He is in the sheriff department, I think.
Oh, is he?
Chris Dixon is, if that's,
Yeah.
he's sheriff's department.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
in sheriff department because his mom
He's
was
not short,
sheriff.
so maybe you're thinking of someone
So,
else.
no, so yeah, I'm thinking of someone else then.
Well, just out of curiosity, I wonder what the makeup of the Scott County Sheriff's Department is compared to the Davenport Police Department. And,
Sure.
and just,
Well, even diving deeper than that, the patrol deputy ranks and then the jail ranks too, because I'm sure you have two different demographics within each of those two as well.
I think they got
How
more
many- I
than
wonder
they
how
have in the
many are
police
inside
department.
of the jail?
you think they do or don't?
They do, I think.
But
Color?
more so in the jail or on patrol?
They, 'cause when I
Probably the jail.
talked to
I would think
Tim
so.
Lane,
I would
The
think so,
requirements to
too.
work in
had
jail.
somebody
Not
that
as-
talked
not
to
as
me, and it was
rigorous
an
as
patrol.
African American, and
Yeah.
he was seeing how many they had, but I.
So
I'll
are
get
there,
those demographics.
are-
out. That would
are
be
there-
interesting. I'm curious.
are there benefits and compensation and stuff similar, or?
They're similar. I think when it comes to Quad Cities area police departments, Davenport is, if not the top, it's one of the tops. I mean, the starting pay for officers on this list is $57,465.
I mean, 'cause it
Oh,
was-
yeah, that's
just-
way,
that's
way better
just
than a
base
lot of
salary.
places.
Because it
on
would
the
be
top of that,
awful
benefits.
curious. You've got the Scott County Sheriff's Office here and the Davenport Police Office here, 1 block away. And why would, you wonder if they're succeeding more or less, or why would someone go to one as opposed
Sure.
to the other?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll look into that, because I see the sheriff at the Y all the time. But, yeah, I can get those demographics and kind of the breakdown and see kind of how they're utilizing their challenges and opportunities as well.
I think the sheriff has less qualification than the police is.
Could be. I haven't really looked into their
Well,
process.
I have
Yeah.
checked into it.
Mhm.
You know, not say less, but it's not stiff like it is for the police when you want to become a policeman.
Sure.
Mhm.
I'll look into that. Report back.
Any thoughts, questions? for Scott?
So help, in your networks, share some of the social media posts. Owen over at the PD, along with our own city communication staff, has put some great graphics on Twitter and our Facebook and our Instagram. Share those with your medias, social medias, professional and social, just to encourage. I think
And the
those are
beauty
great
is,
ways.
I'm seeing even even people like the library, Denver Public Library, is resharing those or making.
Awesome.
Yes,
Yeah.
so that's a wonderful
That
part
helps.
because it helps.
Yeah.
And you talk about it. So that's wonderful. That's what I saw.
Yeah.
But to continue on with the conversation that we have, the next on our agenda is the internships. And Scott, one of my students, Scott and I had briefly talked about it a long time ago about paid and unpaid internships within the city. How can we have, because there are people who ask, there are students who ask, and Scott had something to share about internship programs.
Well, and I think internships are awesome, absolutely awesome. And I do want to share, we do currently have 2 internships open within the city, and they're both in city administration. So they would be working upstairs on 3rd floor at the direction of Corey Spiegel, our city administrator. So you have that job posting there, $10 an hour. It's open until May 1st. So if you have interested individuals in city government, public administration, that would be appropriate. I know that the fire department has an intern coming in, and they have a partnership with Western Illinois University. So kind of a direct line partnership with them. So they have an intern coming in. And I've been trying to track down Chief Sikorsky today. I've been unsuccessful to find out if he's had some initial conversations with city administration on police department internships, which I'd be most interested in.
That would be, yes.
So I'm still trying to figure that out, if by chance he's got some money in his budget or he made a line item for some interns, and I'll report back to you. But as soon as I know, we can definitely help recruit for that as well.
Scott, it might be here, maybe I'm not reading it well, but how many hours would it be?
Well, that's a
Just
good
an
question.
just an
It
approximation to know,
probably-
so I would share this with students for sure. Oh, sorry, I should have seen it.
And when will it be filled?
Final date is
Well, if
May
it closes
1st.
May 1st, probably by the end of May, I would imagine they'd have some
Oh.
candidates. But yeah,
I mean, just for an idea, so, to kind of talk to students, kind of, how many hours a week and.
Say.
So would they have to, okay, never mind, I see it.
It doesn't talk about hours per week though.
They
No,
got
it
to
doesn't.
work
Yeah.
so I'll try to, I'll get that
evening
information.
and weekends.
So has the city, I know that we are grossly underrepresented, minorities for city jobs, period. And me remember I had told you, I had applied and went through
Yes.
through the testing, which I didn't do the greatest on the testing. But once that happened, I really got to thinking, I'm like, okay, there's 200 and something people who have applied for this position. But I felt like the process is backwards because you are bringing 200 and something people in for testing when maybe only 25 of those people even have relevant experience to the position in which they've applied for. And then maybe you get the top 15 people who test. None of those 15 people have any experience doing what it is that they applied to do. So have they ever considered changing the process of that? Because that was something that I know I've been in finances for 12 years. That was something that I know 100% that if they would have went off of experience
Yeah.
and, you know what I mean, accomplishments in that position, there's no way that I would not have been considered. But since they went backwards and went off of the testing,
Sure.
I was not.
Yeah.
So have they ever considered changing?
I haven't
the
been
way
part of
that
those
that works?
conversations, but yeah, I can definitely see your point in
Yeah.
the process, yeah. I think they're using the test to be kind of some sort of funnel to at least a starting point.
Yeah.
And
I think it's
So-
backwards.
but I can definitely have that conversation with other staff and see, what the philosophy is on
Okay.
that. So, because yeah, I knew it was the.
I did. So then there was another
position
one.
right over here.
Yep, they had sent me something back for, and I was one of those people who was just like, I'm not even gonna go to this because there's really no point
Yeah.
because there's going to be, tons hundreds of other people in this same room who may test better, but I'm, more qualified, so I won't be considered. So I'm just gonna let it go.
Scott, just a quick question for my clarification, because I can see sharing this with it says high school graduation or equivalent with current enrollment. Am I right in thinking that the student could be a current enrolled high school, maybe 11th, 12th grade?
Or just a high school
just
graduate.
Just for my understanding, or it's the individual
Yeah.
would be a high school graduate. I mean,
Yeah.
This
No,
enrollment
current
in a
enrollment
graduate
refers
school.
to college, and they say
Okay.
they desire graduate. Because when they're saying graduation or equivalent, that
Yeah.
means GED or high school
G-
diploma.
Sure.
Okay, so that
So
should
it's-
be
so it's not high
completed.
school, yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
And
the way I
current
think.
enrollment would be the college part, in
Correct.
case if
So-
your college,
Or
okay.
graduate school.
So you may have some folks potentially,
Yeah, right, to kind of go into.
and actually you do, because
We had one
my
who
friend is PJ Foley, I don't
Yeah.
know, and he's, one of his students has applied,
applied for it.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yes.
good.
so.
That's good.
There was one who had worked here downstairs a year or two ago. She wanted to go into city administration, so she'd worked, it was an internship that she did with Civil Rights
Okay.
Commission, but, so she
Sure.
wanted to get into administration, so.
Yep.
Any questions or thoughts here on internships? Thank you very
I'll,
much,
I'll
Scott.
get the work hours on that.
That would be wonderful.
That'd be important to
And I
know.
would be happy to share
Yeah.
it with a few that would be interested. The next on the agenda, Scott has put something about outreach, and we got talking during the last meeting about how do we approach students when we were talking about things happening at Adler. Adler was going to, I think, River Center, not Adler, excuse me. River Center was going to have a known speaker, and I unfortunately forget that individual's name, who was invited by Danforth School District, and they were going to have different tables for careers and things like that. And in the meantime, Scott did get connected with a certain individual, and the police department was able to have an outreach table to talk to students about the careers and things like that that Danforth School District has. During that conversation, I got in touch with the individual at the school district who's responsible for such fairs, where her name is Jennifer Boyd, and she basically is a curriculum specialist who deals into, her specialization is mostly dealing into jobs where the student comes out with technical abilities, like for example, Danforth West has a program which teaches students, how to build houses, to be an electrician, to be a carpenter, and things like that. And we do have physicians in the city parks and Recs department and other places who do employ, who do need such people. So she is absolutely, Jennifer Boyd is absolutely willing to work with our city departments to showcase, if we need a showcase of what we do, and we need those kinds of individuals from various stratas within our Danforth community. She's absolutely willing to help, and she's right now on leave, so she couldn't talk to me more. She was away, but she's also happy. She said that she doesn't mind if we would like her to come here and share with us how she can help us put our city departments out. She'd be happy to do that. So that was Jennifer Boyd. The second person who said, I need your help, the other way around, was Pam Kirsch. And Pam Kirsch deals with the department which looks into the dropouts at Danforth Community School District. And she's come and talked to us a very long time ago. And I met her again.
Yeah, she came too.
She,
that's right.
long time
Right.
ago she came and talked to us. And the help that she needs from us when she is, in case if we can give them a platform, like let's say our churches, our temples, or our communities where we meet together, where we could give a platform where she can go and talk. Like for example, a while back, I think the police department had a get-together. There is a club next to Putnam. I was there with Maria Dickman was there. And I forget what it was, but all the city departments were there, and there were kids. It's right on the right-hand side of Putnam. As you come up the hill, left is Putnam, and I went on the right-hand side.
I'll be on the baseline.
I think so. I think so. And they are all kids of different age groups.
That's where my
you know.
son plays
There,
basketball.
there you go. There you go. So all the city departments came there. They were talking about what they offer, and be safe and this and that. So she wants that kind of audience where she can go and speak and let them know, and she's willing to help us extend in the sense we say, okay, you finish this, you finish that. Okay, you have a job, or you have an internship, or you can have, it's $57,000. You could, if you do this, you can be a police officer, but you need this. Don't drop out. That kind of stuff. So if we can help her in some way, I said that's an interesting idea, and I think some of us, the last time when she came here, did invite her at that time to speak. But again, she's again willing to come and share what she actually wants as help from our community. And I remember coming down to the LULAC offices, when we had a discussion about traffic. This was again a long time ago, but about traffic and the study that the police department had done. So that kinds of outlets where she would like to have a conversation, both of them. So I just thought of sharing it with you all, because if we want to catch them young, in the sense, in a good way, to instill that these are the possibilities. So if we could help in any way. Sorry, Bob?
I've got 14 grandchildren, and some of them now are they're just in college or entering college, and I'm sitting here and listening to what you're saying, and sometimes I think I wonder also what the perception of a job with the city is amongst our population. I mean, some of my friends and people in the last 15 or 20 years, the perception was, oh, it's a good job, it's got good benefits. If you get hired there, you can retire from there. There wasn't much of a perception that there was advancement, that the people that came, if they were a supervisor or a department head, they usually hung around, and there wasn't. So if you went there, it was someplace you went, and once you had a little experience, would leave. And so I'm wondering if there's ever been any studies, if part of our problem is, what's the perception? I'm a minority. If I get on the police force, I'm never going to be part of the management or supervision. There's no real future for me. So maybe we're doing a better job getting them in, but maybe part of the problem now is what's the perception in the community or among those. Or maybe it's not even so much that, maybe it's more, what's the perception of the Quad Cities? It's not really a place that young people want to be, or is it a place, we've got a part of the puzzle that we're answering, but I think that there's, as part of the solution, there's more pieces that we probably got to try to look at, and as part of the problem, the housing stock. I mean, it used to be that the rental housing wasn't available, or the downtown. Well, now that seems to be, but then some of the other. I was talking with a couple other nonprofit directors, and they said there isn't the same need for the housing agencies that there was back when I was active in it, that those neighborhood pockets have been torn down or disappeared, or private money has come in. So is it someplace I want to live? Is it someplace I want to, I'm sure there's got to be other factors that are contributing, because I think we are doing some things right, or trying to, and it would be just interesting to get some more of this information, just to see what the perception is as far as a job with the city as a whole. I mean, I think we think it's favorable, But I think I'd be interested in trying to get some of those pieces too.
Sure. Further that discussion,
Sure.
in the interest of time.
Yeah. And just before we leave, Scott, is this on the city's website, the internship? Okay,
Yeah,
so
sure.
like, I could share just the link and have it out. Okay,
Yep.
thank you, so I'll check on that. So, next time when we meet, maybe, and I would be meeting Jennifer Boyd in the meantime, I'll get some more information from her so that I could share with you all to see what we can do to continue our conversation. Any questions or thoughts? To Stewie?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Jasmine.
Second.
Do I have a second? Second. Thank you.
All
Just
right.
wait before you go, I have something to ask you.
All in.
Okay,
All
Scott,
in
I
favor?
got a
Thank
letter
you.
from the mayor.
Thank you for the prompts.